I'd like to welcome to the show nationally syndicated radio talk show host Andy Dean, the host of American Now Radio, heard over in 100 major markets nationwide, including right here in New York on WOR AM 710 radio. Andy Dean is on from 6 to 9 every day. You might have seen him previously when he was on The Apprentice, Donald Trump's show, and he's worked for many years for the Donald in a very high-level capacity, running a big division of his media and entertainment conglomerate. And with that said, it's awesome to welcome you to the show, Andy. And how are you?
Good, Adam. I appreciate the invite. So you do a good job as a guest on my program, so I wanted to return the favor. And it's a pleasure to be on, so I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. It's my pleasure, in fact. I love doing your show. The conversations and the topics are always exceptional, and your callers that always call in have the greatest questions ready to go. So let's get started. I know your show, what I love so much about it is you cover so many of the best trending topics, which we try to do here as well, and you have a good take and a good spin on things, and whether we agree or disagree on a lot of the points, it's always good conversation that makes sense and gets a different point of view out there, which I like. And in my show, I really try to preach getting the ideas out there and sparking conversation. So I know with that said, my listeners are going to probably be wanting to call and ask some questions, so we may take some calls while you're on. But let's get things started. In wake of Nelson Mandela passing away today, you know, the great things he's accomplished and his real civil rights movement that he really was the father of over in South Africa. How do you compare a man like Nelson Mandela to President Obama?
Well, Nelson Mandela is an icon and a leader and a man who believed in personal sacrifice. This is a guy who spent 27 years in prison, and he was offered a chance at early release 5 years before he was actually released, and it was under the condition that he stop advocating for his beliefs and, you know, basically get out of the political game. And he said no to that, and he went back into jail for another 5 years. So this is a guy who went into politics to create change, not to enrich himself, not for any selfish motive. He was part of a movement. And sometimes a man makes the times, and sometimes times make the man. With Nelson Mandela, it was both. He was a product of a unique point in history, and he led an incredible movement against racism. And so he will never be forgotten by history. As far as Obama, obviously he'll be recognized as the first African-American president, but I almost look at Obama in two ways. He's almost two men. There was Obama in 2008 who held all this great potential. Everybody in the country was rooting for him. And then we have Obama now, 5 years later, who's governed, and he's shown himself, and this isn't a political opinion, this is fact, to be an inept leader who has made a disaster of the rollout of the healthcare system. Foreign policy-wise, we're a less respected country. And so I think if Nelson Mandela had to look at Barack Obama and make a judgment, I think on the record he'd be a big fan, but off the record, I think Obama is a disappointment, and it's really the record that speaks to that. So that's how I would view the two of them.
Well, I got to say, I agree with you. I've been on other shows and been pretty vocal about the disappointment in Obama as president. I can't remember another leader taking office that had really a national mandate, other than maybe Kennedy, where the whole country wanted to see some kind of change. They really got behind him. You know, you basically had the whole government taken over by Democrats, where he had a filibuster-proof majority to really pass any of the programs that he really wanted to. And it all seemed like a dog and pony show, where once he got in, he talked about a single-payer plan where every American will have health coverage. He went into all different things. I'll fix the tax code, make it fair for everybody, and all these bankers that are stealing money, and the mortgage meltdown, I'm going to correct this, and people will pay, and no bailouts. And he did the opposite almost on everything. I mean, I haven't seen someone who has been that much of a disappointment. And by the way, there's a recent poll that shows of all the American presidents in the last several decades who they consider to be the greatest and the least great. Obama was at the very bottom of the list as basically the most disappointing president over the last several decades. I mean, does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me because you know, you can only fool people for so long, and I think people are realizing that he doesn't walk on water. And with the comparison again to Nelson Mandela, you know, the greatest thing I believe that Mandela did is that he walked away in 1999. So he served his time as president, and then he said, look, it's somebody else's turn, and he underutilized power. And I think a sign of any great leader is somebody who underutilizes power and pays it forward. If you look at Obama, this is a guy who, in every dimension, has tried to overstep his bounds, whether it's forcing people to buy a product like health insurance, which is a violation of the Constitution. The only reason why it was held up is it ended up being ruled a tax. So Obama's a guy who overutilized power and a guy who's never bridged the divide. I can't think of one example after 5 years of Barack Obama reaching out to Republicans and saying, hey, let's do something together the way that Bill Clinton did in the 90s with welfare reform. Obama has no interest in that. And to throw Mandela back once again, Mandela's a guy, if there's anybody who could have kept a grudge, and deservedly so, it would have been Mandela against the people who imprisoned him. But Mandela didn't do that. He worked with the people who imprisoned him, and he said, hey, let's create a better future for the next generation by working together. Obama's never done that in the history of his governance. And so that's an example, once again, of failed leadership, and I think that that's clear.
Well, I got to tell you, when he got released from prison after you said he could have got out earlier, chose not to because he believed in his principles so much, but he actually preached forgiveness after that to the very people that imprisoned him as a way of bringing people together. Now, if that's not leading through example, there's nothing else that really demonstrates that enough. And when you take a look at what's going on in, the White House today and in the Congress, no one's talking to anybody. You can't get these sides together to work. I don't know necessarily if it's all on Obama. It's almost like this is like two dysfunctional groups together, and I'd love to see us get away from the political party system altogether and just have individuals run where people are just blindly voting for Democrat or Republican if it's on the left side or the right side when they hit a box, and they don't even know who the candidates are or what they believe in. They're just like pre-programmed. So, but I think Obama, in another bigger way, you look at a man like Mandela who fought for civil rights for so long to make the lives of everyone better. You look at Obama, and when he ran initially, he basically had this whole platform how he was going to improve everything and change things from the Bush era. And then ironically, you get into all these restrictions on civil rights. Like there's never been spying on the public at a higher level. I mean, what do you think about all the NSA spying that's going on between emails and cell phones? And it just goes so across the board.
Yeah, my take on that is actually pretty different than I think most people out there. And that I think that the NSA should have the power to be doing these things. And I side with the intelligence agencies because after September 11, 2001, I think we need to make a decision as a country that Muslim terrorism is a real problem, and we need to go after these people, and we need to stay on the offense, because if we don't, they're going to hit us again. And so a lot of what these revelations that we've seen from Edward Snowden, it's not new information. I mean, I've known about this. The Senate Intelligence Committee has known about it, that essentially they look at metadata. So they don't listen to people's phone calls, but the fact of communication that I'm calling you right now is known by the phone company, and so the NSA can find that out. And the only way they can listen to a phone call is through a federal warrant or through a legitimate wiretap. And so a lot of the stuff the NSA is doing, I think, is perfectly legitimate. They do it within the law. And if they break the law, which is clearly defined, then they need to be held to account. But all the stuff that Snowden's releasing, I don't think it's new information. I don't think what he's doing is helpful. And it's all to target Muslim terrorists. And I think it's a very real threat. And if we don't go after these people, and we don't have to go after the people that are financing them, then they're going to hit us again. So I see the whole civil libertarian debate very differently. I'm not a libertarian. I don't like libertarians. I'm a conservative, and that's the way that I see it.
Well, let me ask you, Edward Snowden, hero or traitor?
He's a traitor who should be shot. I mean, the fact that he's still alive to me is fascinating. Essentially, Obama doesn't want to bring him to the United States because he would be turned into some sort of celebrity, which I understand. You can't bring him here, but he should have absolutely been killed by now. The fact that Edward Snowden is walking the earth is insulting. This is a guy that stole government secrets. He's putting government operatives' lives at risk. People who are in our intelligence service who risk their lives for us are now at risk because of Edward Snowden. This is a selfish guy who didn't get the attention that he wanted until he left the country with classified information. And if he really cared, he would have blown the whistle. You can walk into any congressman's office and say, hey, look, this is what I found. He chose not to do that. He chose to travel to China and then to Russia, and he gave away all our secrets to these governments that are no fans of the United States, and now he's living as a mini celebrity in Russia. I mean, if this guy really loved America, he would have given this information to our, to our people here, but he didn't do that because nothing he was saying was interesting. Nothing he was saying. The politicians in America on the Senate Intelligence Committee know exactly what he revealed. It's obvious. It's not a violation of law. So what he's doing is political theater, and a lot of people who are uneducated or don't understand how intelligence programs work think that he's some sort of hero. It's because they don't understand what the NSA is doing. And so to me, Edward Snowden should be shot, and he should be shot immediately.
Well, there's a lot of people out there, Andy, who feel I can't even say 180 degrees probably isn't enough to stress it opposite, that this guy's a hero, that this is a guy that exposed clear violations of law that the government was doing. And I don't think there's anybody really out there that once this has been exposed and reported upon that really didn't say that this guy didn't expose that the government was doing improper things. I mean, they're going into people's private confidential emails or cell phone records that no one knew or consented to.
Adam, it's not actually correct. I mean, if you look at both Republicans and Democrats on the intelligence committees, literally, whether you're liberal or conservative, all of them agree that what Edward Snowden revealed is nothing new. The PRISM program, the intelligence community knew all of these programs existed, and the politicians have oversight over all of this. What the NSA is looking at is the fact of communication, not the communication itself. Once again, they can't read your email and they can't listen to your cell phone call. But what they can do is say, hey, this Muslim terrorist is communicating via email with this person or is calling this person. And then if enough terrorists are talking to one another, then they get legitimate legal warrants to then look into the communication.
But I think you're missing the point, Andy. You're a law-abiding citizen like you are, Andy. You don't have any of these kind of materials or statements in your email records. What gives the government the right to go into your records and read your records, to even have them scanned in a peripheral way just to see if it may contain a word or phrase? Because then we're living in a fear-mongering society.
Adam, the problem with your logic is that it's not factually true. They're not doing that. They're not going in and reading your information. That's absolutely false. And by the way, the idea that the government would have the manpower to do that anyway, there are 310 million Americans. I probably read and receive 100 emails a day. The idea that they could even read all my communication if they even wanted to is patently absurd and laughable. But what they do need to know is who's communicating with who outside of the United States. If two Americans are sending emails back and forth, the NSA does not have the power or the legitimate authority to look into that. And if they do, they're violating the law, and they need to be punished in accordance with the law. But if I'm emailing or calling somebody in Pakistan, they do have the ability to know that I did that, the fact of communication, and then if they get the proper legal authority, they can go in and read that information as they should be able to within the confines of the law. And that's what those programs do. Anything else that you say or that you've read that is contrary to that is factually incorrect.
Well, new declassified information just came out that showed that the NSA was sharing these bundles of information they got from Internet data, emails, and everything else with other government agencies that actually did violate the court-ordered procedures that were put in place to protect every American's privacy. So I got to disagree with you on that, Andy.
Well,
Listen, we got a call on this. Let's take a call on this. I think we have Sean from Forest Hills, New York on the line. Sean, go ahead with your question.
Hey, Adam. Love your show. Long-time listener. I have to disagree with what Andy's saying. Andy, forgive me, but I think you're being naive. The point is that, what Edward Snowden did, I think is exposing that the government is doing shadowy things. And if it was not such a big revelation, then this wouldn't be on every newspaper, every station, with every congressman who's up in arms about this. World leaders were apparently spied on by the NSA. I mean, these are facts.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Why is that bad? The point of, remember, laws don't apply to foreign leaders or foreign citizens. The Constitution does not apply to foreign citizens. It applies to an American citizen and to the American public. So if we're spying on the leaders of foreign governments, that's what governments do. We're in the spying business. You don't think China spies on us? You don't think Russia spies on us?
So, okay, but you're citing enemies. But what I'm talking about is the leaders of Germany, the leaders of Britain. We were actually tapping their phones.
Yeah, I hear you. Now look,
why would you? And those are our allies, Andy. Sean, I got to agree with you, Andy. These are our allies that we're supposed to be working with, that we're members in NATO with, defending supposedly the world against evil with, and we're tapping and listening in on them. And when they found out this was going on, it created a very major rift with those leaders in those nations, and they wanted us to immediately stop.
The other thing I want to point out is this, that, this government has now a history, unfortunately, as much as we'd like to believe that that's not the case, has a history of looking for legal loopholes to do things. So I'll give you, for instance, the rendition sites that are, offshore so that we can go and do waterboarding and all sorts of other things that are unconstitutional, yet we do it, right?
Whoa, it's not unconstitutional. You're factually incorrect. I mean, the program that was set up in the legal apparatus under G.W. Bush and Dick Cheney, that's enhanced interrogation. None of these people were tortured, and we were trying to get information from Muslim terrorists. And you laugh as if this is some sort of joke. They murdered 3,000 Americans on September 11th, and you treat this like it's a grain of salt. I mean, think about how insulting.
You're putting words in my mouth as to whether that's laughable.
You're so insulting to the families and the victims of September 11, 2001. These are terrorists that we need to get information from, and that's how you get information, is through enhanced interrogation. If you want to lawyer these people up, they're never going to talk. And I live in the real world, but we're at war with Muslim terror.
All right, so for the folks that have been in Guantanamo Bay for 12 years without a single charge against them, you're okay with that?
100%. They're enemy combatants, and their cases have been reviewed by dozens of lawyers.
So why have charges not been brought against them?
Well, for a lot of these people caught on the battlefield, it's not easy to get a witness in the Taliban to testify against them. But every single person at the case file that's been reviewed independently by dozens of lawyers in the Defense Department and the Department of Homeland Security. And they're foreign citizens caught on a foreign battlefield. So the idea that you're sympathetic to them is offensive. It's ridiculous is what it is.
But
Andy, I got to really disagree with this. Sean, if I could just jump into this is a great conversation. This is why I didn't want to interrupt. But, we have people that are being held without a trial. We certainly couldn't do that to an American, and it's obviously so egregious to our rights that we have. But these people that are being held for 12 years, when you say the Department of Justice and Homeland Security have reviewed these files, I mean, those are government agencies attached to the military that are assigned to protect national security for the company. You're not having independent defense counsels being able to argue these cases to independent judges to see if these people are really enemy combatants or not. They don't know. So let me ask you this. In 2011, Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act, which basically said that indefinite military detention without charge or trial into the law, into U.S. history, basically saying that people will be detained and there's really no way of getting them out because you're talking about they're going to be detained even without getting trials, even without being charged. I mean, inherently, as just moral, do you think that that's the right thing to be doing to people, Andy?
Okay, let's talk facts for a second. Guantanamo Bay, at the height of holding prisoners, held about 700 people. There are only about 150 of them, give or take a few, that are left at Guantanamo Bay. A lot of those cases have been reviewed, and for the ones that weren't enemy combatants, they've been sent overseas to their home countries, and many of them have turned up in the battlefield either killing Americans or killing Westerners, whether that's in Syria or in Africa and Algeria. So these people that you're super sympathetic to, who have been sent back to their homeland, have turned back up on battlefields, murdering innocent people. As for the 150 people left in Guantanamo Bay, these are the most egregious offenders These are the most egregious enemy combatants whose home countries won't even take them because they're battle-hardened terrorists. These people include Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And military tribunals for a lot of these people are either about to start or they've been underway. And the idea that you're sympathetic to these characters defies the imagination, because these are the last of the battle-hardened terrorists who, if they were on the phone with you right now or in a room with you, they would cut your head off with a butter knife. These are Muslim terrorists who are either part of 9/11 or part of killing American soldiers overseas. So let's not make it out as if these are like Nelson Mandela types. That's who we're talking about.
Well, yeah. Remember the perspective, Andy. Remember the perspective, because at one time Nelson Mandela was an enemy of the state of South Africa.
You have no moral compass. You have no moral compass. If you're saying you're going to argue to me that 2 + 2 isn't 4, I'm saying that I have to make a judgment that there's good in this world and there's evil in this world. And
but in a blanket statement, you've said that everybody is guilty in Guantanamo Bay. Everybody that's held in Guantanamo Bay is
let's have everybody talk one at a time so we can hear these points.
If you're going to compare Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to Nelson Mandela, it shows that you don't have a baseline of morality or a baseline of intelligence.
No, everybody is afforded a trial. Everybody is afforded a trial.
But nobody's disagreeing with that. Any American citizen under the Constitution gets due process of law.
Where is the trial for these folks?
They're enemy combatants. They're enemy combatants, and they're still getting military tribunals. And there are only 150 of them. Okay, but the idea that you would compare these people to freedom fighters when they murder and behead innocent civilians means that you have no moral compass. And if you're going to engage
but you're jumping the gun there, Andy, because we don't know. You're assuming because they're being detained that they did something wrong. If that's the case, bring a charge and bring a trial and convict them. And if they're convicted, they'll get the death penalty.
Yeah,
so where's the trial? I mean, just so you know, if you think getting a confession through waterboarding isn't a big deal, that is one of the most severe forms of torture that you can get anybody to admit to anything. If I waterboarded you, Andy, I get you to admit that you had an affair with Dick Cheney at a hotel somewhere, you'd eventually say yes. And I could get Dick Cheney waterboarded and he'll agree too. You know, it's been proven that you don't get reliable material from waterboarding.
You don't understand how
torture does not bring about reliable results.
Of course it does.
Have you been waterboarded, Andy? Can you as a competent person say that you've been waterboarded?
I've never been waterboarded, but that's not the issue. That's not the issue. You're
the issue is that because people that have done torture on other people, experts in the field say it produces unreliable confessions that doesn't produce results.
If you had any common sense, torture's been around since the Middle Ages. Why would it last for thousands of years if torture didn't work? Of course torture works. If you ask me, hey, Andy, what's your deep, darkest secret? I would never tell you. But if you start sawing my fingers off, I would tell you every single thing I know. And when you get information, you can check and verify it against other pieces of information. Now, is it perfect? No. But you're able to produce more information, and then you can weigh that information to see if it's helpful. So the idea that torture doesn't produce information, it means that you just don't understand how things work.
No, you just agree to anything so you get out of that pain.
That's not true. If somebody said, Andy, what's your deepest, dark secret? I say, F you, I'm not saying a word. And then they start cutting off my fingers, and I would start telling them my secrets. And then they could compare that and look up, and they say, well, Andy, how can you prove that you actually did that? And I would say, oh, ask this person, do this, do that. And then they would verify and back-claim and back-check it. And that's how you would do it. I mean, the idea...
But you're assuming from a point of guilt. Andy, this is where your fallacy comes in. You're doing this all from a point of guilt. Let's suppose you take a person that has no deep, dark secrets to reveal and did nothing wrong. You start cutting those fingers off and waterboarding them and ask the same questions. Aren't you a terrorist? Aren't you involved in something? After going through that torture for a while, even if he's not, guess what? He's going to say that he is.
But it's a way of finding out. And we've only waterboarded 3 people. One of them was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
It's a way of finding out. So what are you saying? Let's waterboard and torture people, and if we happen to be wrong, it's just a couple of fingers that got cut off and a couple of minutes of them pretending to drown in water?
First of all, we don't cut off fingers. Any enhanced interrogation is non-permanent. and we've only waterboarded 3 people. One of them is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. If we're talking facts,
Do you
let's talk
really
facts.
think we only waterboarded 3 people?
Hey,
Do you
can I
honestly
just say
believe
something?
that?
Maybe we did more, and I would celebrate it if we did more. These are radical Islamists, radical jihadists, and the waterboarding of them is to find out actionable intelligence to prevent the future harm of Americans. And it's as if you guys were sleeping on September 11, 2001. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, oh, well, why were you asleep at the switch when planes were flying into our buildings, and then assume it's going to be simple and easy to prevent it in the future. Getting information and being on the offense is dirty and messy.
But Andy, we had all that information before 9/11, and it still happened. We were listening and wiretapping and decoding all these things prior to 9/11. Facts and evidence had come out to show that the Bush administration knew. So if we were doing all those things prior to 9/11 and it still happened, why wasn't it prevented?
Whoa, the idea, I hope you're not a 9/11 conspiracist that thinks that G.W. Bush knew in advance about September 11, 2001. Because if you are, then there's no point having a conversation.
There's been documents revealed that show there were communications that the NSA had and that different military commissions had that said that there was a potential of hijacking on planes and to be alert. Is this the first time you're hearing that?
No. Look, they were in the daily briefs that Al-Qaeda elements or Muslim terrorists were looking to attack the United States. But there was no actionable intelligence that there were 19 hijackers that on September 11th would board aircraft. The idea that there's a conspiracy theory or anything like that is ridiculous. Look, it was intelligence. They messed up.
We're not talking about a conspiracy theory. We're talking about your point that if you get information, such as through the NSA, eavesdropping and listening, we can prevent these things and make America safe.
Yeah, let me add to that. Let me add to that.
Well, sure. Let's have Sean going on this. You've been listening still on the line. Sean, please
Adam,
chime in.
You're a defense lawyer, right?
Absolutely.
You do criminal defense, right? One of the things that we're all, one of the things that we're all granted is the fact that we are allowed a defense, right? And that's the idea behind a trial. Now, that doesn't mean that people that get arrested aren't guilty. It just means that they get to present a defense. Why is it that all these folks that have been, interned at Guantanamo Bay are not allowed to present a defense?
But that's factually incorrect.
Well, I got to agree that I think they should be.
They have lawyers defending. They have lawyers, and nobody's arguing that they shouldn't. They have lawyers defending them.
Where is the trial, Dean?
Yeah, well, they're going to get around to doing military tribunals, but these cases have been reviewed, and it takes time, and these final 150
guys
are so bad.
It's been 12 years,
so bad.
Andy. It's been 12 years. How much time does it take?
Well, look, they've reviewed the cases, and the most battle-hardened murderers, they're going to get to, remember, their home countries won't take them, and what's the option? I mean, what do you want to let these guys loose?
By the way, you and I both know that if these were guys at the level of a Sheikh Mohammed, they would have been, tried and kept in a maximum security prison in Colorado like the rest of the guys, right?
We're at war, though. You look at this as a crime, okay? To me, all of these 150 people should already have been shot and buried. These are war criminals, no different than a Nazi. Like when you walk into a concentration camp in 1945, according to your logic, you want to round up all the Nazis, sit with them, figure out their files, give them a defense.
That's what we did.
No. You shoot them in the head.
You heard about the Nuremberg trials, Andy, I presume. That's why they were called the Nuremberg trials. Suspected Nazis were put on trial to hold people indefinitely without a trial, and you say be patient for 12 years is wrong. If we're going to talk about Nelson Mandela today, he was a leader. He led by example, and he preached forgiveness and moving on and to protect people's civil rights. And whether he agreed or disagreed with the white minority that was running the country at the time, he listened and tried to bring people together. If America wants to take the forefront as the leader of the world and show what a great country we are, and we're fair to everybody, whether they're a citizen or not, that we have that moral compass, that we do that for everybody, that will send a message around the world louder than any bombs we drop, any fingers we cut off, or anything we do to anybody. So if we can show the world that the people that we suspect are involved in terrorism will still get an opportunity to have a trial. It doesn't have to be a trial like we get. It could be a military trial, but still get a trial. What makes us any better than Iran by not giving them a trial? What makes us better than them then?
You want to send a message to the radical jihadists that we're like morally better than them? They don't give a damn about you. They're offended by the way that we live. They're offended by our culture. They're offended that women have equal rights. So the idea that like Guantanamo Bay offends them, that's like on a list of 500 things that offends them. The
But
fact
this
that we
isn't
don't
about what
live under
offends.
Sharia law, it's like, why are you you're like sensitive to what like the radical jihadists think about our country? When we're at war,
I think I'm one of the most outspoken people
it's-
against jihadists, actually,
Well-
Andy. But the thing is, I want America to always preserve our image as the place of freedom, of what's right.
Yeah, but remember,
that we won't change.
Abraham Lincoln,
This is what's important, Andy. This is the point. We won't change our way of life and our values to go down to those other countries that we frown upon. Do we want to be looked upon in the same breath as North Korea or Iran, that we imprison people without trials, we execute them without trials?
Yeah, but see, you're
we
not
don't
operating,
respect
Adam.
rights?
You're operating on an intellectual plane that is devoid from reality. In North Korea, they have 2 million people sitting in labor camps that are innocent civilians that have done nothing wrong. We have 150 people down at
Well, how do you
Guantanamo
know?
Bay.
Maybe the state calls them enemy combatants, just like the people we have in Guantanamo. Wait a minute.
Adam,
How can you say it's wrong what they're doing in North Korea, but it's not wrong what we're doing in Guantanamo Bay? How can you say one is wrong and the other isn't?
Hey, Andy.
You're not operating in reality. If I said 2 plus 2 is 4, you can say, well, how do you know? There needs to be a baseline of which you're refusing to operate under.
All right.
So it's difficult to engage in an argument. You don't engage in it.
Hey,
You've got to have a
Andy,
certain baseline.
Andy, I'll give you your wish, okay? You can get rid of these 158 folks. Just give them a trial. If they're guilty, shoot them. That's all. Execute them. Give them a trial.
Okay, look, I'm not even arguing against that. I'm not
Unfortunately,
arguing
we
against
got a minute left. We got a minute left. I got to leave it there. Sean, thank you very much for the call-in. As everyone listening out there, we were just arguing a great point with the wonderful Andy Dean, the host of American Now Radio on WOR AM 710 Radio, syndicated nationally around the country. I urge everybody to go to his website, listen to his show. These are the kind of debates and the kind of topics you learn on Andy's show, engaging, invigorating, and they will expand your mind. Whether you agree or disagree, it's important to be part of the conversation. With that said, everybody, thank you for listening to the Adam Thompson Show. As always, think outside the box.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. You take it easy.
Take care, Andy.
Thanks, Adam. That was fun. Talk to you soon.